nandito po kami sa National Real Estate Association for our webinar. Ayan, kami pong lahat ay bumabati sa inyo ng happy birthday. Ayan. Diba, President Ricky?
Happy birthday, Secretary.
Yes, hello po. And of course, welcome sa ating guest speaker, si Mr. Mirasol. Sino pang nandyan na sa atin?
Si Joey Bondoc.
Mr. Joey Bondoc, welcome po sa NREA. Yan.
Hi ma'am, good morning.
Good morning po. Medyo mag-ano ka muna, medyo mag-greetings na tayo. Medyo
wala na po. Pang-ilan ako?
Parang mayroong hangin blowing in one of the microphones.
Baka siguro
ayun, nawala. Pero
i-silent natin ang ating mga cellphones para hindi sagap masyado. And then ilagay natin. Parang may sumasagap. Pwede yan, siguro mag-mute tayo lahat except for the speakers and the moderator and our MC. No? Mag-mute ako.
Mute daw muna. Mute daw muna.
So set si Attorney Belgica is online na, hindi pa?
Mr. Jovi, Mr. Benny, kapatid Benny, you can start greetings na all our speakers and also our sponsors, and then we welcome them all while waiting for us to start.
Si May ang MC. Master of Ceremonies natin. May
can start.
Yeah.
Si May mag-toto.
Start na tayo.
You at least we welcome our speakers and our sponsors, and then welcome to our Defining the Normal with the NREA family.
Okay, so let's start. Good morning, Philippines. Good morning and good evening, America, and to other countries in the world. Welcome to our National Real Estate Association or NREA Business Forum via Zoom live streaming on Facebook. I am Imelda Magtoto, the NREA Vice President for Internal Affairs, and your MC today. Our topic is defining the new normal in real estate. So for our sponsors, we have the world-class Kababayan by Marissa Del Mar, Ganzon Incorporated by Architect Grace, BRIA Homes by Red Rosales, Duraville Realty and Development Corporation by Jeffrey Bongat, Realcor Incorporated and Seneca Real Estate Property Management and Leasing Incorporated by Senifruto, and the Philippine Daily Inquirer. So before we start our forum, let us all sing our pabansang awit. Now, I will call on our NREA National Auditor, Ruth Marie Atienza, to lead us in prayer.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for the blessing of a new day to love and serve you through others. Each morning, as we arise, you give us new life and new hope. Inspire us to do your will at all times. Accept, O Lord, our offering to be an instrument in your hands, to bring your love and grace to others and into our country and into the world. We pray for an outpouring of your Holy Spirit upon this initial online business meeting of the National Real Estate Association, or the NREA. May our speakers enlighten all the participants as they expound on the theme, defining the new normal in real estate. As many adjustments in the way we live and work are asked of us due to this pandemic, we ask for the grace of discernment that our choices will lead us to follow you more closely in all that we say and do. May we be one in giving you glory in this activity. This we pray through our Lord Jesus Christ and the powerful intercession of our Blessed Mother Mary. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
So we have our board chair lady, Architect Grace Layu, for the introduction of the NREA Board of Trustees and Officers and Board of Advisors. For Board of Trustees and Officers, we have our chair lady, Architect Grace Layug, our board vice chairman, Benigno Cabrieto Jr., our national president, Ricky M. Celis, our executive vice president, we have Amy Florin C. Soon, our vice president for external affairs, we have Rizalito Red Rosales, Yours truly, as the Vice President for Internal Affairs, Imelda C. Magtoto. Our Vice President for Chapter Affairs, we have Seni Fruto. Our Secretary General, Jovi Francis Tupas. Our National Treasurer, we have Nicole Anne-Marie Chowa. Our National Auditor, Ruth Marie Atienza. Our Public Relation Officer, we have Gali Da Costa. Trustee and President for Education, Rodolfo Leonen. Our trustee, Aniceto Isnar Jr., Jeffrey Bongat, trustee, and attorney Vicky Polisco. For our Board of Advisors, our Chairman Emerita and Chair Lady of the Board of Advisors, our very own Marissa Del Mar, Member Architect Felino Palafox Jr., Architect Nestor Mangyo, Alejandro Manyala, Ban Sanchoa, and Mars Mendoza. For the acknowledgement of the chapters, we have Seni Fruto,
Miss Zenny, please unmute.
Is that okay,
Go ahead.
Jovi? Okay. Now, we have our different chapters of our organization. We have the Pampanga chapter. Excuse me, I'll start with Metro Manila CBD. We have our chair, our president, Emilita Pulido. And we have our Pampanga chapter. We have Nino Ryan Dadula. Our Cavite chapter, we have our Sandy Coral. And our Cebu chapter, we have Abondio Golchano Jr. And our Baguio chapter, we have Joey Jimenez. Our Bataan chapter, we have Juliet Refuerza. And our Zambales chapter, we have Marjorie Dizon. And also we have our other chapter in Cagayan de Oro, we have Viola Soon. And I think that's all our chapters. And for membership, maybe you can contact our office telephone numbers will be later flash in our screen. Thank you and good morning again.
Thank you, Ms. Seni. We also would like to acknowledge our NREA Secretariat, headed by the Executive Director, Ms. Suzette Pusong, Executive Assistant Lane Santawana, Paul Texon Santos, Aileen Garlitos, Iya Lapos Angeles, and Bong Mendoza Ehada. Again, we would like also to thank our sponsors, the world-class Kababayan by Marissa Del Mar, Ganzon Incorporated by Architect Grace Layub, BRIA Homes by Red Rosales, Duraville Realty and Development Corporation by Jeffrey Bongat, Realtor Incorporated, Seneca Real Estate Property Management and Leasing Incorporated by Seni Fruto, and the Philippine Daily Inquirer. So, for the welcome remarks, we have our NREA National President, Mr. Ricky M.
Thank you, Ms. May. So good morning, everyone, to our Board of Trustees and Advisors, the chapters, the membership, our speakers, our sponsors, and guests. Thank you for joining us. This is actually our second business meeting for the year. The first one was on March 5, just before the quarantine started. So obviously, this forum and future ones will be on stream, online. And to me, that is a very good thing because that means more people can join, to both the local and the overseas audience, less logistical preparations, and therefore we can do this more frequently. Ladies and gentlemen, we are where we are, and our ability to accept that is the first step to discover the vast range of opportunities this pandemic has created for us. It's one thing, but defining who you are and creating new values. Because this situation will separate the men from the boys, the winners from the losers, those who will continue and thrive, and who may cease to exist. We are also seeing buying patterns already. Our lifestyles, our behavior are starting to take different shapes and forms. Show the shape and form of our products and services. So do we simply adjust to this new environment, or do we build and evolve a new ecosystem around it? We are joined today by three guest speakers, experts in their fields, to give us a flavor of how the demand side, the regulatory side, and the supply side are rebounding, rebooting, or even reinventing the real estate industry as we know it. And of course, defining for all of us what we now refer to as the new normal. We hope that we have a very productive and engaging discussion. Thank you very much and welcome to NREA Business Forum Online. Good morning, everyone.
Thank you, President Ricky. So, NREA is announcing and offering a new normal rate for new members. Also, for all licensed and registered real estate practitioner who would like to avail of the PRC self-directed learning for CPD and CPE units, just type your real name with your picture in the comment, screenshot together with the ongoing NREA Business Forum, and send it to NREA for a certificate of attendance with a fee. NREA contact numbers 028913-4463, 028912-3492, and email address nrea_org@yahoo.com. The contact numbers and email address will be flashed from time to time on the screen. So today we have house rules. Please turn off your video and mute your microphone while the speakers are speaking, and only we unmute the speakers. Also, if you have questions for the speaker, just type your question on the chat box. Our moderators will handle the questions after all the speakers have spoken. So let's start. We will now have our PRO, Ms. Dolores Da Costa, to introduce our first speaker.
Thank you, Ms. May. Good morning, colleagues in the industry. This is a very exciting morning as we hear from our first guest speaker, who will give us a talk on real estate industry post-COVID-19. And I am just as excited to be the one to introduce him to you. Our guest speaker is from Pampanga, and a graduate of the University of the Philippines. He is currently the Senior Research Manager of a global real estate firm, Colliers International Philippines, for the past several years now. He is known to be very humble, friendly, and intelligent. It takes someone intelligent to be in charge of generating periodic reports that cover the office, residential, retail, leisure, and industrial segments of the real estate market. And those of us who are in the real estate business really need this. In view of said periodic reports, we conduct macroeconomic analysis, particularly doing assessments on the impact of economic growth on real estate sector. Thus, is able to provide us so much information with this market overviews. And so, without further ado, let us all welcome the Senior Research Manager of Colliers International Philippines, Mr. Joey Roy Bondoc.
Hello, good morning. Thanks to NREA for inviting me. I think this is my second time to speak and present Collier's findings on the property market. This is really a new normal that we are facing right now, and a lot of developers have been, adjusting to this new normal. A lot of investors have also been rethinking their strategies. How should they invest? What kind of properties will they buy, and where will they invest? I think that's one of the more important questions that have been raised, especially now that we've been doing a lot of webinars during this COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown. So I have here a few slides on the property market and the Philippine property market. Let me just show you my presentation. I hope you can see it clearly. So this is the new normal that we're seeing in the Philippine property market. But let me just first give you a few slides, a macroeconomic review. So of course, the Philippine economy contracted by 0.2% in the first quarter of 2020, and a lot of analysts were a little startled by that finding because they thought that somehow the economy will still grow at about 1 to 2%, but because only the last 2 weeks of March were affected by that lockdown, so they thought that somehow the economy will still grow. But a lot of analysts are projecting a much deeper contraction by the second and third quarters of 2020. Remittances are still growing, and we have to note that anecdotally, OFW remittances, or the money sent in by OFWs, continues to drive the demand for residential units here in the Philippines. And it covers the demand not just for the condominiums, but particularly for house and lot units in areas outside of Metro Manila. And anecdotally, you have the likes of Iloilo, Cebu, Bacolod, Davao, Pampanga. These are among the major areas for residential demand outside of Metro Manila, especially for house and lot. And we have a lot of OFWs that have been investing in their own residential unit or condominium projects in this location. So there are projections that remittances will drop by $3 to $6 billion for 2020, and that is significant. So let's see, how this pandemic pans out and how it affects these economies that are currently employing Filipinos. Now, if you've been following our presentations at Colliers, we always project land values to continuously increase. However, for 2020, as you can see here, we are likely to see declines in land values all over Metro Manila. And of course, we attribute that to the slower demand overall for property development projects here in the Philippines. If you look at this slide, so you have the major locations: Makati, Fort Bonifacio, Bay Area, and Ortigas Center. Now, because of slower economic activities and our projected slump in terms of development, the appetite for land all over Metro Manila is likely to drop, and hence we are projecting drop for the these major business districts, ranging from about 5 to 15% contraction for 2020. Now, office segment, we are seeing a lot of new normal in the office market. In fact, at Colliers, we were initially having a few queries or major queries that were supposed to be closed before the lockdown was imposed. But all these leases are now on hold, mainly because of the lockdown that was imposed. And of course, the COVID-19 pandemic, that has been affecting a lot of countries, a lot of major economies across the globe. So right now, they are weighing their leasing options. So they're either trying to look at, say, the next 3 to 6 months before finally concluding their leasing options. Some companies, especially those that are catering to hotels, for instance, and of course we know that the leisure sector is not doing well at this point. They had to drop all their leasing options altogether, and had to just pay the reservation and just not lease any more office space for 2020. So that is a little gloomy for the office market in 2020. But what we can tell you is that the a lot of government officials are projecting a recovery by 2021, and that should of course have an impact on the office sector. Now, if you look at the 2020 supply here, we're projecting about 780,000 square meters of new office space for 2020. So that's about 26% decline from what we initially estimated, which is about 1.07 million square meters. Now, for the construction sector, a new normal will probably be the implementation of social distancing, physical distancing measures within construction sites. So that will have an impact in terms of a new office space completion in Metro Manila. And we are seeing that already. Now, again, because of the lockdown and the COVID-19 pandemic, the demand for office space has become lukewarm. So our projected vacancy for Metro Manila office will likely increase from about 5.5 to 7% in 2020. This is much higher than the 4.3% that we recorded in 2019. Now, just to give you historical data, the last time that we saw office vacancy in Metro Manila rising beyond 8%, that was in 2009 during the global financial crisis, where office vacancy reached 8.6%. Now, as a result, the lease rates for office space across Metro Manila declined during those regional and global financial crises. So you have the Asian financial crisis in 1998 and the global financial crisis in 2009. Of course, during the Asian financial crisis, the market had a much difficult time recovering. They immediately recovered after the global financial crisis of 2009. So rents during that time picked up in 2010. Now, prior to this COVID-19 pandemic, of course, you have the POGOs, the offshore gaming companies from China that were taking up a lot of space. And as you can see from this slide, there are business locations that benefited from the presence of POGOs. Bay Area, lease rates increased by 21% when the POGO market occupied a lot of space in the Manila Bay Area. Alabang also has been accommodating to these POGO companies. But of course, as so we know, some POGO companies are not operating as of the moment, and we've heard reports of these POGOs ceasing operations and are planning to go back to China once the travel restrictions are lifted. Although we hear some POGO companies doing the exact opposite, they are eagerly awaiting for the lifting of travel restrictions so that they can go to the Philippines and start occupying space and working here, serving the offshore gaming demand in mainland China. Now, the Metro Manila office market is one of the more robust even before the COVID-19 pandemic. As you can see here, it's being ranked Bangalore, Delhi, Singapore. These are the major locations for businesses in the region. But because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the ensuing lockdown, Manila is now at this stage between vibration and denial stages when we're seeing lease rates dropping, correcting because of the imbalance of office supply and demand. But again, one of the perhaps parts of the new normal that we're seeing for Metro Manila office for the entire Philippines is that a lot of companies have been expanding outside of Metro Manila, and we see here a lot of queries from companies that are planning to occupy space in Cebu, Davao, Iloilo, Bacolod. As Ms. Da Costa mentioned, I'm from Pampanga, so I'm a little biased. So a lot of companies also are looking at office space in Clark. Those that are into medical coding and outsourced accounting, especially Pampanga being an educational hub in Central Luzon. Now, this slide here is interesting because this is the heat map that was released by Moody's Investor Services, which is a credit rating agency, and they rank industries that are most vulnerable to the negative impacts of COVID-19 pandemic, those with moderate exposure, and those with low exposure. So it's interesting to see real estate and the REITs having low exposure. So I think that is still good for our industry going forward. Now, speaking of industries, the POGO industry, its share to total office absorption in Metro Manila has been rising since 2016 when they first entered Metro Manila, and in 2019 covered 37% of all transactions in Metro Manila. Now, they currently occupy 1.34 million square meters of office space. That is pretty significant because that represents 11% of total leasable office space in Metro Manila. Now, the common question that we get, given this new normal and some restrictions in China, will POGOs leave the Philippines? Will they pull the plug and leave the Philippines at once? If that happens, what kind of vacancy will we see in Metro Manila? Well, you have it right there. It's 11% plus the 4.3% vacancy that I mentioned earlier. So we'll probably have a 15% vacancy in the Metro Manila office, which does not really look good because that might result in further erosion of rental values. But I think right now it's still status quo, and we've yet to see all these POGOs really pulling out of the Philippines. I think they just want to start operating again, but of course, their decision to operate again or their plan to operate again will primarily hinge on the compliance in terms of a tax regulation that has been imposed by the Bureau of Internal Revenue. Now, these are just some policy concessions that we believe will help spur demand in the office market, in the property market in general. So, of course, lifting of PEZA moratorium in Metro Manila, because if we want more BPO companies to occupy office space in Metro Manila, we should approve more PEZA locations, more buildings, grant them with more PEZA incentives so that more BPO companies will be enticed to occupy office space. Sitira, of course, there's some versions that, or some provisions rather, that are that are not exactly positive for a lot of BPO companies, especially those provisions that are imposing higher income taxes. So we believe that those provisions should further be evaluated, especially if you want to entice more BPOs to invest here in the Philippines. And of course, we see a lot of reports by IBPAP as well as DOLE saying that over the past few years, there has been a significant share of provinces contributing to more jobs created in the BPO sector. And we believe that that should result in further decentralization of economic activities. Now, speaking of new normal, what are the benefits of a remote workplace? These are some of the viewpoints that we got from a Harvard Business Review, saying that this new normal, under this new normal, we're doing a work from home strategy or split operations. I'm in the office right now, but some of my office mates, 50%, are working from home. So this split operations, flex and core, as we call that, Colliers, has become a very attractive, a very viable option for a lot of companies, and they have been reaping the rewards of this split operation. So, of course, there's reduced operational capital expenses. They're able to hire people from other parts of Metro Manila and still work together seamlessly. All they have to do is to log on to their teleconferencing apps, similar to what we are using right now. And of course, some employees report that they've been very productive when they work from home. But there are instances wherein some employees also don't find it really efficient to work from home because because of some household issues, space constraint, and poor internet connection. But what are the company's legal obligations around COVID-19? Of course, body temperature. This should be tested regularly. Access to face masks, personal protective equipment. I have three right now provided by my company Colliers, which are being replaced every day. Of course, there's regular disinfection, and similar to when you go to public places, in every office space there should be social distancing measures. And we see this especially when we buy our essentials and visit malls. These are just some of the rent concession that have been provided to companies or occupiers of office space, especially now that we're seeing the new normal. So these are just a few, and if some of you might want to further delve into this rental concession, of course, you may get in touch with our brokers from Colliers International. But just to summarize what I have presented, supply for office space will be down by 30%. Demand will be down from the initial projection of 900,000. We might now see only about 450,000 square meters of office space being taken up in Metro Manila. As a result of that supply and demand imbalance, vacancy will rise to 5.5 to 7%. And we project office lease rates to drop by between 10 to 17% for 2020. Now, these are the recommendations for companies taking up office space. But I think what really stands out here is that companies are now revisiting their density ratio. So they are now allotting more space per employee. That's why in the near term, we expect demand for office space to increase. And also some companies are adopting, as I mentioned, flex and core. So 50% of their staff are working in traditional office space, but 50%, the remaining 50% are working from home and are submitting their output requirements online or through cloud computing systems. For landlords, for developers, so what really stands out is that they have been strengthening their property management capability. So a lot of sanitation, business continuity plans being lined up by developers. But we are also seeing a lot of green buildings, LEED buildings, well-certified buildings. These are all the economically sustainable buildings, those that are aligned with global health standards and have been providing significant health benefits to occupants, to companies occupying the office space. So we are likely to see more LEED certified buildings going forward. In fact, over the next 3 years, about 30% of a new office space that will be completed is LEED certified. Now, for the residential sector, and I know that some of you, or perhaps most of you, are interested in the residential segment. What we are likely to see is the slower completion for 2020. We're only projecting close to 11,000 condominium units that will be completed for 2020. So that is significantly less compared to the 14,000 that we initially estimated. So that's 3,000 condo units shaved off our projection, and 2/3 of those will be in the Bay Area. Of course, developers have really become very aggressive in terms of tapping that demand from POGOs. And just to provide historical context, and some of our colleagues from NREA are probably familiar with how prices of condos moved during these periods: Asian financial crisis, global financial crisis. Of course, the Philippine property market had a more difficult time recovering during the AFC, Asian financial crisis. Somehow we were able to be shielded from the debilitating impacts of the global financial crisis by strong domestic economy as well as remittances from Filipinos working abroad. So these are just a few economic indicators that we need to watch out for, especially if we want to see a recovery in the residential condominium market. Unemployment, of course, in April, unemployment rate reached a record high 17%, meaning 5 million more Filipinos joined the ranks of the unemployed. Interest rates remain low. The central bank will probably be more aggressive in cutting interest rates, and that should result in lower mortgage rates imposed by banks. And of course, consumer confidence, a key factor that respondents consider when responding if they are positive on their economic outlook is if there is enough employment, enough livelihood in the market, and if remittances are still being sent to the Philippines. Now, part of the new normal is that a lot of developers have also ramped up their launch of new promotions. So in the pre-selling market, we now see developers becoming really aggressive, offering discounts of 10 to 15%. I'm seeing 20% discounts even online on Facebook and other social media sites. The required down payment is now down to 20%. During previous years, this reached a high of 30%. And of course, no more reservation. This is, of course, the first to be dropped, especially when developers are seeing a slowdown in the market. But what I can tell you is that we have 47,000 unsold condominiums in the market, and the most of this come from affordable and mid-income segments. So these are priced from 1.7 to 6 million pesos per unit. So the question that we see amid this COVID-19 and the lockdown imposed and the new normal that we're seeing in the property market is, has the party ended? Because after the Asian financial crisis in 2000, the prices of condominiums have increased at a sustained pace, but we're likely to see that declining in 2020. If you look at this graph here, that the blue line represents the increase of condominium prices in Metro Manila, and even with inflation reaching a high of 5.2% in 2018, the prices even grew at a much faster pace, and we attribute that, of course, to the POGO demand. Now, speaking of POGO, if there will be less take-up or purchase of condo units, then we're likely to see a higher vacancy in the secondary market, or those condo units that were completed and turned over already. So just a recap of what I have presented for the condominium market. Supply will be down by 3,000 units. Demand will also drop, resulting in correction of lease rates as well as correction in prices, average prices of condos in Metro Manila. Again, supply will mostly be in the Bay Area. 2/3 of new condominium units this year will be in the Manila Bay Area. So for developers, how should they respond to this new normal, to the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdowns imposed by the government? Of course, they need to highlight property management also, similar to office buildings. There should be some, concrete health and sanitation procedures being done regularly. And for them, this is the opportune time to really offer flexible packages and the terms for potential buyers. And developers, we believe, should be more proactive in terms of responding to the needs of their potential buyers, because we also believe that those developers that will be able to proactively touch base with their clients will be remembered once this pandemic is over, and will be top of mind when investors or clients start to buy condominium units. So similar to what we saw during the Asian financial and global financial crisis, these developers, these proactive developers were really able to stand out after those economic crises. And of course, we have to ensure that the condominium units are adaptable to modern technology. We now see a lot of people working from home. So there should be proper, enough, adequate provision for internet connection, for cabling, etc. So all these measures should be observed by developers. Now, for buyers, we believe that every residential investor is opportunistic in nature. So they will definitely look for cheaper options in the market, especially those that are trying to offload property so as to generate more cash. But what we have seen also is that a lot of investors, buyers are looking at properties that are within integrated communities so that they can easily access retail needs, essential goods, as well as clinics and other health services. Some are even looking at a second house, second unit outside of the congested Metro Manila, and have been more aggressive in looking for properties in the provinces, northern and southern part of Metro Manila. This is the retail space, but I won't discuss this in detail. But what I can tell you is that retail vacancy might increase in 2020. So from 9.8% in 2019, we might see a retail vacancy inching up to 12% in 2020 because, of course, a lot of retailers will now be we find it difficult basically to occupy new retail space because of slower consumption, slower demand from consumers. So as a result, retail rents are likely to drop 5%. While most of the incoming retailers are into food and beverage, of course, they should also ensure that they have the proper delivery systems and logistics systems so that they will be able to reach last mile deliveries and customers. So while we see a lot of companies trying to adapt to online shopping and online payment systems, the Philippines, while we're adaptable to these systems, we lack the proper technology and financial infrastructure to ensure a seamless buying and selling of goods online. So if you look at the retail segments that are likely affected or most affected by this COVID-19 pandemic, of course, we have retail spaces where people convene. So you have the likes of cinemas, luxury goods, fitness gyms. And of course, those that are still doing well are pharmacies, e-commerce platforms, and of course, food and beverage retailers. These are probably the new normal that we will see moving forward. So more customer service robots and of course, less interaction with a physical crew or physical restaurant staff. So more kiosks, ordering kiosks that are likely to be put up across restaurants and malls in the Philippines. So again, one of our recommendations for retailers is to innovate. Otherwise, they will just evaporate. And of course, for a lot of retailers to further expand their logistics and delivery tie-ups, even their partnerships with online selling platforms. And we believe that landlords, small operators, retailers should now line up their marketing efforts so that they'll be able to recapture the demand once this pandemic is over or once the lockdown has been eased further. So again, what do we see in the property market? We always say that this COVID-19 pandemic's impact on the economy and property is probably worse than the global financial crisis, but not as bad as the Asian financial crisis because the financial system of the country is strong and interest rates remain low. So what I can also tell you is that the V-shaped recoveries that were previously projected are now out of the window. A lot of analysts have ruled those out already. We're likely to see a U-shaped, slower economic recovery, and we hope that the property sector, office and residential, condominium, retail, as well as leisure will be able to tread that growth trajectory that we hope will start by first quarter of 2021. So that's our presentation, our call year's updates for the first quarter of 2020 and the new normal that we see in the property market.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'll stop sharing now.
Okay, later for the questions.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For all those who have questions, just type your questions on the chat box and our moderators will handle them after all the speakers have spoken. So we like to acknowledge the presence of our honorary member, Peter Wallace, Sheena C. Yap, the daughter of the president of the Forest Lake Memorial Park, Tony C. Yap. So as of now, we have 147 viewers in Facebook and 61 inside the Zoom. So for our next speaker is a practicing lawyer, a licensed real estate broker, an environmental planner, a Christian pastor, formerly a radio host. In July 3, 2019, President Rodrigo Duterte appointed him as the first Director General of the Anti-Red Tape Authority, or the ARTA, also known as the Republic Act 11032, the Act of Ease of Doing Business and Efficient Delivery of Government Services. So, for his topic, it's the role of ARTA in the new normal for real estate. So, let us welcome our speaker, Attorney Jeremiah Belgica. Attorney, good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Imelda. Thank you for inviting me and having ARTA as one of the presenters. I'll try to be very clear and very brief if I may. There are a lot of grounds to be covered. First off, I also want to congratulate the previous speaker for an excellent presentation. We know that the Filipinos have always managed to bounce back in any kind of challenges that we have. Ganyan po talaga tayong mga Filipinos. So if I may I ask that we be allowed to share our slide. One of our ARTA personals are here, Director Jana. So I've been tasked to speak about the role of ARTA in the new normal, specifically for real estate. As a former real estate practitioner, as well as a legal practitioner, I feel that I'm in the right crowd. I do understand the concerns and the uncertainties of some of us, and we hope that understanding more about the law and as well as the role of the Anti-Red Tape Authority would be able to address some of our situations and our questions. Next slide, please. So let me start off with saying that with the passage of the landmark legislation, the Republic Act 11032, or the Ease of Doing Business and Efficient Delivery of Government Services Act of 2018, it also created a singular agency that would oversee the compliance with the national policy on anti-red tape and ease of doing business in the country. There has been a previous law on anti-red tape, which is the Anti-Red Tape Act of 2007, but it merely focuses on limited services in government and limited agencies in government. But with the passage of this more comprehensive, all-encompassing, as well as the incorporation of the aspect of ease of doing business as one of the strong focus of this law, and the creation of the Anti-Red Tape Authority under the Office of the President, the Philippines has now entered into amongst its neighborhood of regulatory reform-minded um, countries. No, I could say that with confidence when I did join in one international convention last year. Uh, the passage of 11032 and the creation of ARTA is one of the, I would call it, social experiments that the Philippines is offering in the world. And I'll explain a little bit further why did I say so. Next slide, please. So let me just show you a quick video talking about the basic functions of ARTA.
Pangarap ng batas na ito na maalis na ang red tape at korupsyon upang tuluyan ng mapabilis ang mga proseso ng gobyerno. Upang makamit ito, may dalawang landas na sabay na tatahaki ng ARTA. Nandito ang empowerment at enforcement. Una ay ang empowerment, kung saan bibigyan ng tulong at kapasidad ang mga ahensya ng gobyerno para mas streamline, ma-re-engineer at maiangat nila ang kalidad ng kanilang serbisyo. Tulad ng regulatory impact assessment, kung saan ang mga proposed na proseso ay sinisiguradong may progressive na effect. At ang regulatory management system para patuloy na maging effective, productive at efficient ang proseso ng mga ahensya sa pamamagitan ng pagsigurado na ang lahat ng ating mga regulasyon, batas at polisiya ay dumaan sa masusing pag-aaral. Pangalawa ay ang enforcement, kung saan ang mga ahensya na lalabag sa batas ng ARTA ay papatawan ng naaayon na kaparusahan. Guided by these two pillars, our gift of productivity and efficiency to the people will be just a step away. Approve ka, ARTA!
Sorry, as you could see, as summarized by the video, ARTA's functions may be generally categorized into two categories. The empowerment function of ARTA, which is a streamlining and helping government agency re-engineer and improve their regulatory systems. And second is the enforcement. Ito po yung para kang police na you are making sure that sila ay compliant, and also having the power to file cases for administrative and even criminal sanctions. Next slide, please. Now, to give us a bit of a context on our battle against red tape, many of us would always hear about the word red tape, which actually would mean to say that these are regulations, policies, processes that doesn't actually serve its purpose anymore, but only to delay and to lengthen the processing of applications and government services that produces suboptimal results and even negative social impact. So, but we have to understand that the battle against red tape is fought or waged at two levels. The first level is the agency level red tape that we need to address. Ibig sabihin, the agency level red tape are pertaining to services that already may be delivered on a single agency alone. Sa isang agency, the permits may be released or may be processed through that agency alone. Now, the next level of red tape that we are addressing is the interagency battle against red tape. In my opinion, this is a bit more challenging because it involves several agencies together regulating one person, and that Juan de la Cruz would sometimes or normally would get over-regulated and the results would be counterproductive to the aims of development. So let me just give you a little bit of understanding what we have been doing and what we are going to do with the agency level of red tape and the interagency level of red tape. Next slide, please. Now, using our enforcement powers, the ease of doing business law prescribe a particular processing times for simple transaction, complex transaction, and highly technical transactions. Meaning, ang lahat po ng mga transactions in government should be categorized as simple, complex, and highly technical. And it is also very clear in the law that simple transactions should only take 3 days, complex 7 days, 20 working days for highly technical transactions. A simple transaction is a transaction that is ministerial in nature. That doesn't take much thinking, much analysis. But a complex transaction, it takes a little bit study and even analysis. But a highly technical transaction involves a transaction with public health and public safety implications. Maari po itong food, maari po itong gamot, and the like. Now, ARTA has been enforcing strictly the 3720 day processing time. In fact, we did issue the 3720, we did establish the 3720 day, which is March 7, 2020 day, as a deadline for government agencies to act upon their backlogs. And which brings me to my next slide. As part of our enforcement power, and I would suggest that each and every one who is dealing with government should actually understand the importance of a citizen's charter. A citizen's charter can be compared to a menu in a restaurant. When you go to a restaurant, you first look at the menu so that you would know what are the dishes that are being offered and how much is the dish that you would want to purchase. In the same way, when you enter into a government office, there should be a menu. There should be a list of government services that lists its requirement, its procedures, its the persons responsible, the maximum processing time, as categorized into simple, complex, and highly technical transaction, the documents required, the fees per service, and also a grievance mechanism or feedback mechanism. Mahalaga po ito dahil kung wala po ang isang government office po ng Citizens Charter, ang sabi ho ng batas, sila po ay in violation already. So a Citizens Charter should be found at a conspicuous place in the vicinity of the government office, in their website, and they also need to have a printed form. So we did roll this out October, November, in the government agencies in Luzon, Visayas, at Mindanao. So, ito po yung sinasabi na ating Pangulo that you provide for a list. All government agency must have a list of what is required. And do not add on that list, do not add on the fees that is listed there. Otherwise, you will be charged. So, this is the Citizens Charter. Okay. May we, next slide, please. Okay, so what happens if a government agency violates the 3720 rule, as mentioned in their Citizens Charter? Well, the law says that if it is not acted upon within the prescribed processing time, and the submission of your documents are complete already, you have fully paid your fees, then it is automatically approved by operation of law. Meaning, Kongreso na po ang siyang nag-approve po niyan, at hindi ho ang ARTA at hindi ho tayo. It's Congress who said, as long as it is complete, as long as it's fully paid, if you have proof of payment and proof of receipt, then those receipts may be already proof that it's already automatically approved. But for ARTA, what ARTA does, because you understand that it's still a bit awkward for your business partners or business colleagues, na bibigyan mo sila ng resibo at sasabihin mo, oh, approve na po yung application ko kasi sabi ho sa batas, ito ho yung resibo. So what we do is, when this kinds of inaction reaches ARTA, we do issue a declaration of completeness of documents after reviewing your documents, after asking for a quick response from the government agency, and we issue a declaration of automatic approval. And in fact, since August last year until today, ARTA already issued around 7,000, more or less 7,000 automatic approval or automatic renewal of applications, particularly with the LTFRB, the FDA, the SEC, and some local government units. Next slide, please. Now, for the enforcement part, we do not particularly enjoy this, but we would be more than willing to crack the whip if needed. I do personally believe, coming from the private sector, that some agencies, that the people would really need a stronger push for enforcement. Kasi sinasabi, aanhin mo ang batas kung wala namang itong ipin. So ARTA has been conducting surprise inspections sa mga LGU, sa mga permitting offices. And here are some pictures that we did with the Register of Deeds. Next slide, please. We also conduct hearing when it pertains to, since real estate po ang ating pinag-uusapan. In this picture, we could see that we did invite, required for a meeting, the Register of Deeds of NCR, because ARTA found out that the Citizens Charter of of most, if not all, of the Register of Deeds were not within the processing times of 3720. So what we did was we called them, tinawag ho natin sila at inalam ho natin bakit ano ho ba ang proseso, ano yung difficulties. So that we would be able to have a better understanding of the processes and what other things that may be improved within their services. So before the lockdown, before the March 3, 7/20 day, the Register of Deeds have already revised their Citizens Charter to be within the 3/7/20 days. No, so at least yun po, doon sa first part na yun ay papasalamat naman ho kami at hindi na ho umabot kami sa further investigation that everybody already revised their Citizens Charter. But we are still monitoring everything. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick video. Let's play this video. A visit that we had. Okay, so that is one of the videos, and we are actually thankful that in that video, the head of, I think, the ARTA assigned, the officer assigned for ARTA Matters, which is the RD of Manila, has been working with ARTA and pushing for the streamlining of their services. No, din ho namin nakita sa visit na yon yung mga Citizens Charter po nila. No, so that's just one of the many visits that we did. Now, let me now go to more enforcement. Maybe you're asking, what are the penalties? What are the penalties that awaits government officers or employees for non-compliance with the ARTA or with the Ease of Doing Business law? Quick video again for the penalties, please.
Sa panahon ngayon, hindi na pwedeng nakakalusot ang hindi sumusunod sa batas. Ang mga kalokohang ito, walang takas. Si boss, mahigpit yan. Kaya tignan mo, unang pagkakamali pa lang, mabigat na ang parusa. O strike to ka pa, aba, wala kang kadala-dala. Kaya lahat ng ito, ipapataw sa'yo. Di ko sure sa'yo ha. Ang akin lang, mag-isip-isip ka na. Si boss, panalo yan.
Next slide, please. Okay, so the video said for the first offense of any violation of the stated penalized or prohibited actions in the law, 6 months suspension po ang ipapataw without pay. But for the second offense, it's a dismissal from service, perpetual disqualification from holding public office, forfeiture of retirement benefits, and imprisonment of 1 year to 6 years with a fine of not less than 500,000 to not more than 2 million pesos. So medyo mabigat po talaga. And if you would be asking me, as some of the our colleagues from the government would say, why is the law so sabihin natin the penalty so steep? And I would basically just say, well, it approximates the damage of red tape in our country, and it seeks to address and to emphasize this is how important the government's battle against red tape. Next slide, please. So quickly, what are the violations under the Act? Bilisan ko po, no, refusal to accept application with complete requirements, imposition of additional requirements other than those listed in Citizens Charter, imposition of additional costs not reflected in the Citizens Charter, failure to give written notice on the disapproval of an application. So remember this, no, let me just stop quickly. Hindi ko kayo pwedeng sabihin na, oh, it's denied. No, you have to put it into writing. Paano kami mag-appeal if it is not in writing? So if they refuse to issue that written disapproval, then that is a violation itself. A failure to render government services within the prescribed processing time. This is very important. Letter F is failure to attend to applicants prior to the end of working hours during lunch break. Some reports have come to us from the real estate industry na binibigyan daw sila ng cut-off, no, dun sa mga offices na pinupuntahan nila, 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, hindi na tumatanggap. That is a violation according to the to this law, no. And once your application is already complete, they cannot refuse the acceptance of which without first, producing through it at sabihin nila kulang talaga. No, failure or refusal to issue an official receipt. And lastly, fixing and collusion with fixers. So as to letter H, there is no 2-strike rule, only 1 strike. Kapag ikaw po ay nakipag-collude sa fixers or you employ fixers and you are a person from government, then you are already automatically terminated from service and with the appropriate penalties like imprisonment and forfeiture of fees. Next slide, please. So did ARTA already file cases? Yes, we did. We did last September 2019, October, and so on and so forth, involving some officials from the Register of Deeds, from national government agencies, local government chief executives, and there's more to come. No, more to come po for some who would really refuse to heed and think that this is just a paper policy. Hindi po yan ang intention po natin. Next slide po. Now, honestly speaking, the enforcement function of ARTA, although it is very exciting and we would say na hair-raising for some, but the real sustainable change would actually happen when we begin to streamline and empower these government agencies. We are fully cognizant of the importance of both of the roles of enforcement and empowerment, but we do believe that there is a lot of room that we can really exercise on when it comes to rethinking our government services. So this is also one of our function, no? To improve regulatory management and facilitate efficiency and improvement of services in government agencies. And recently, Malacanang did issue Administrative Order number 23 to eliminate overregulation and promote efficient government service. To complement our Memorandum Circular 2020-02, ibig sabihin po, meron ng batas, meron na po tayong Anti-Red Tape Authority, at meron pa kong panibagong administrative order na ARTA rin po ang linagay upang to monitor the streamlining efforts of the government agencies. So within 60 days from the issuance of the Administrative Order 23, they are required to submit their streamlined processes. However, tinamaan po ng lockdown, so the period was suspended and readjusted until July 25. So government agencies ought to submit to us until July 25 for their streamlined processes. Next slide, please. Also, ARTA is in charge to monitor and also to push further for our ease of doing business reforms to submit to the World Bank survey study that World Bank has been doing every year. This is a yearly study that World Bank has been doing, and Philippines is improving. It might surprise some of us, but last year the Philippines jumped 24 notches from 124 from rank 120 29 notches from rank 124. Now we are at 95. So with the reforms that is being done, we do hope that for this coming cycle we would even do more than what we have expected. We hope that we could enter into the top 40 percentile of the ease of doing business competitiveness ranking, at least before 2022. Next slide, please. Okay. The business one-stop shop. This is an important element sa atin pong government bureaucracy, because now the law requires all local government units to establish their own business one-stop shops. So particularly in starting a business, okay? So ito po yung normally if you want to register your company with the LGU, get a business permit, you have to go through the BPLO, Business Permitting Licensing Office. But you would also be required to go to the OBO, Office of the Building Official. You need to go to the Health and Sanitation. You need to go to the Fire BFP to get your inspection and clearance. And before you know it, sometimes because some local government units have their creative way of coming up with processes and systems, it takes a little bit over than a month or even more sometimes if you have difficulty in the inspections. Now, it is required for all of them before 2022 to have their own business one-stop shops. Now, a business one-stop shop, to give us an idea, is not simply co-locating all of your offices in one area. No. Hindi ho pwede na sabihin mo, one-stop shop yan kasi pinagsama-sama namin yan. No. A one-stop shop does not only involve co-locating all of these offices that I've mentioned a while ago, but harmonizing their processes into one, quick process. Like what? There's a single window, single recipient po. There's a unified form that, all of your informations would already be there, so that these offices would now just share the informations amongst themselves. And as to the customer would only experience 3 simple steps. Filing of their application for all of the offices already, and then assessment and payment for all of the requirements of all of the offices within the LGU, and then release of the business permit for all of the offices again. So the client experience is a simple 3 to 4 steps. Okay, so we already have some models and success stories, as we say, especially with the LGUs who sa Metro Manila that we are already pushing, not only to have a business one-stop shop, but to now have an electronic business one-stop shop to fully automate their processes and systems. When you say a business one-stop shop has been automated, it's not just the filing of the application has been automated. When you say an automation, it means end-to-end automation. Everything is automated. And one good example is what happened with Valenzuela and Parañaque. We believe that these models that we already have, there are some other models that we are now seeing and have seen even in the provinces. Meron na po tayo niyan, and it's just a matter of time that the other the other LGUs would also employ this system. So tinutulungan din po natin sila dyan. Now, from our business one-stop shop, I mentioned a while ago that the battle against red tape is waged at 2 levels. So this is lahat ho ng aking pinaliwanag is all at the agency level. But let me now move to the next slide, which would show us one of the initiatives that ART has been doing in an interagency level. Because we have seen when we look at the registration process within the local government units, which is already challenging, but we saw na kung ikaw pala yung magtatayo ng negosyo mo, you do not only deal with the LGUs because you first need to start with the SEC and go through their internal processes. You go to the LGU, you deal with their internal processes, and then the BIR and the SSS PhilHealth, Pag-ibig, and all of which have their own processes. So an interagency approach would be that you would have a single window for all of those agencies. So what we did was we tried out the concept with the National Business One-Stop Shop, the SEC, BIR, SSS, PhilHealth, Pag-ibig came together to harmonize their systems for the application of the one-person corporation or not more than 5 business applications. Kung gusto mo na po ngayon pumunta and you want to register a one-person corporation, you could now go through the National Business One-Stop Shop, which is in SEC. And nandun na po lahat. No, there's a singular form, you file it, and then even the payments for BIR is already there. And it worked. No? And we are hoping that by the end of this year, it would be fully automated at such a point that you no longer need to be there physically present. You have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that you cannot automate a system not unless we rationalize it first, not unless we make it clean and smooth. Kasi if we jump into automation right away, we begin to automate, including the automation, the unnecessary requirements. So as experts would say, IT experts would say, they tell me, DG, it's the automation part that is the fastest portion. But it's the rationalization, removing of the unnecessaries, yun po ang nagpapatagal. So I will just quickly now peruse through some of my points for lack of material time. Next slide. This is now the picture. If you want to enter into a socialized housing business, ito po yan ang inyong kailangan pagdaanan. These figures came from the HUD-CC, 27 offices, 78 permits, 146 signatures, and 373 documents. And this is the Philippine situation that we've been dealing for so long. If you map it out, this is what you have. So I just pulled out one example because this is your area of interest. Next slide, please. So that's why we have launched a interagency streamlining effort, the Nehemiah program, the national effort for the harmonization of interrelated agencies program. As you can see, one of the staunchest partners that we have is our very determined and very competent Secretary of DH-SUD, Secretary Del Rosario, who has said, next slide please, who gave his strong commitment that they will strive so that the youngest department, the SUD, will be the lead agency in the exercise of ease of doing business. And nagpapasalamat ho kami kay Secretary Rosario because we opened this up, we showed all of this, and we said, sir, this is what we suggest that we do. And sabi niya, sige, DG, you tell us, you guide us, let's work together, and then we're going at it full steam ahead. Of course, our cabinet secretary is also one of the co-chair, is the co-chair of the program ni Himaya. Make no mistake, program ni Himaya is our weapon against graft and corruption. You take away human intervention, then the possibility of corruption goes down also. Next slide, please. Okay, I'll try to be very brief on this part. New normal, with the entrance of the pandemic, challenges to business, drastic economic slowdown, and limited mobility affected everything. So during the pandemic, kung pumasok po itong lockdown, ARTA suspended its enforcement function because we cannot distract government agencies to answer queries, formal investigation, while they were addressing the critical needs of the people. There's always time for everything. But starting June 15, ARTA again resumed its enforcement function. But during the pandemic, we continue to give recommendations and help government agencies rationalize their systems. Next slide, please. So moving forward on the new normal, next slide, please. We would be pushing some more important focus on streamlining and digitalization. First, simplify their processes, streamline their processes, and the ultimate ease of doing business is automation, digital transformation. Next slide, please. The new normal basically is one that has become the new standard of way of life adopted by the people in government in order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19 or any other disease, even after the development of a vaccine. Next slide, please. So this is the partnership. When you talk about ease of doing business and digitalization, hindi yun na po pwede mapaghiwalay. The trade industry, the DICT, who is the infrastructure champion when it comes to information communications technology, and ARTA, who is in charge with the streamlining and re-engineering of processes. Next slide, please. Now, next slide, please. So last two slides. On the streamlining, what ARTA is pushing is this. In the new normal, automatic approval and post-audit impositions of minimum requirements. Pag nag-submit po ang tao ng application, ang thrust dapat po ng government should be approved na yan, and then let's just do post-audit unless it is really, really critical and dangerous. If it is low risk, then you approve it and do a very efficient post-audit. Again, we've mentioned single window approach for the business one-stop shops. We believe that all government agencies would learn how to do a right business one-stop shops, reduction of signatories, which includes yung digital signatures, data sharing amongst government offices. Let's not use data privacy as a reason for us not to share pertinent and shareable data amongst government agencies so that we would no longer need to exact this data and requirements from the public. No, share na lang natin para mas mabilis. Extension of validity of permits of licenses, maybe it's 3 years now, extend it 5 years. Zero contact policy, citizens charter, issuance of provisional licenses. One-time joint inspection, we believe na hindi pwede hiwa-hiwalay. If it's in the local government setting, you inspect at one time altogether. Magkakasama po kayo. And conduct of a preliminary impact assessment. This is a self-assessment technique that we would be requiring for government agencies to do before they roll out their new regulations. Next slide, please. And I would be ending very quickly. Next slide. On the digitalization part, electronic submission and acceptance should be the new normal. Use of electronic signatures. Nothing happens in government without a signature. Officially, it makes things official. So simply by convincing the government agencies through the help of the protocols of the DICT and the technology that is already there, to use electronic signatures, this would be a faster solution for us. Digital payments, which is already being employed by some. We've been pushing this also with the recently with the PPA, with the BOC and FDA. Online inspection, baka naman pwedeng hindi na kailangan pumunta doon in person if it's low risk. Online na lang, but also interconnectivity. Now, for my last slide, so when it relates to real estate activities, we would continue to push for the standard transactional form. Minsan po ay iba-iba po ang interpretation sa kontrata, sa mga deeds of transfers na nakakarating po sa mga RDs. So we are requiring them na use a unified form, at least a cover sheet. So to help you, your examiners, to know exactly kung ano kailangan. Patuloy ang enforcement ng 3720 rule, the zero contact policy, and may I request us to join ARTA to fight this fixer mentality for us. Let us not be sucked into that and abet corruption on the ground. Tulungan po natin na baguhin po yan. Ako na po ang magiging fixer. ARTA, just tell it to us if it is taking too long. Don't go to them. Just go to me and we will help you. Digitalization, strong push for e-titling conversion, online system, the TOVS that we are supporting also with the LRA, administrator Permejo has been cooperating with ARTA already, the personal property security registry system. Now, as I end, I would just want to say that the train of reform has already started. Okay? For the business people, for you, for those who are in real estate, know that ARTA is for you. Sa inyo po ito. Hindi po para sa amin, but this is for you. So do tell us, magsumbong ho kayo, you give your suggestions to us because that's our job. For the government agencies who's listening via Facebook, kakampi niyo po ang ARTA because for the streamlining methods, for the techniques, we will help you 100%. But for those who would refuse to accede or to join in the train of reform, you have only 3 options. First is to just step away from the tracks. Second is to join with us in the train of reform so that we could do it together, or stay on the tracks and the train of the people would just run over you. Thank you very much and God bless you all.
Thank you, Attorney and Director General Jeremiah Belgica. So all the questions for Attorney will be typed in the chat box and will be entertained after the third speaker had spoken. So we'd like to acknowledge the presence of our NREA advisors headed by our Chair Lady Marissa Del Mar, Architect Felino Palafox, Architect Nestor Manio, Andy Manyala, Mars Mendoza, and Van Sanchoa. We also like to acknowledge the presence of the NREA Pampanga Chapter President Ryan Nino Dadola, Juliet Refuerzo of the NREA Bataan Olongapo Chapter, Sandy Coral of NREA Cavite, Flordelisa Dungan, NREA La Union. So we also like to thank again our sponsors, World Class Kababayan by Marissa Del Mar, E.G. Ganzon by Architect Grace Layub, BRIA Homes by Red Rosales, Duraville Realty and Development Corporation by Jeffrey Bongat, Realcor Incorporated by Seni Fruto, and Philippine Daily Inquirer. So for our third speaker, we will have our Executive Vice President, Amy C. Soon, to introduce our third speaker.
Okay, thank you, Sister May. And Mr. Joy Bondoc, thank you very much for that very good presentation. And Attorney Jeremiah Belgica, it's nice to see you again. Congratulations, you've done so much. So Okay, so our next speaker is a man of many achievements, but insists on a very simple and short introduction. Mr. Thomas Mirasol has been with the real estate industry for over 30 years in various responsibilities, including project planning and development, commercial office, retail and hotel operations, sales and marketing, property management, business development, and corporate strategy. To discuss about real estate big players in the new normal, please welcome the President and COO of Federal Land Inc., Mr. Thomas Mirasol.
Hi, good morning, everyone. First of all, to the NREA officers and members, and of course, the sponsors of this event. Speakers, Mr. Bondoc and Director General Belgica. Very, very impressive presentation, if I may say. And I think it bodes very well for the future of the Philippines. I will begin sharing my screen now. Please let me know if you can see it.
We can already see your PowerPoint.
Okay, great. So let me start first by saying that I cannot say that I speak for the industry. I speak for my own observations as to what is happening and what may happen in the future. I would also like to say that there are no absolute truths. They are just a range of possibilities and, of course, with room for error. So let me start first by saying, what is it that developers are concerned with at the moment? In the medium term, it is their current inventory and their pipelines of projects. As a developer, you always have a lot of capital at stake. You have capital in the projects you are planning. You have capital in the projects that you are constructing, and you have capital in the projects that you are selling. The key to being successful in this business is making sure that you find the optimum balance of capital that is at risk and at play, and how you can convert that into cash. So all developers are looking to sustain their business at the current market levels, whatever it is. And I think it's clear to everyone that we have not yet reached sort of the, going back to normal levels. Many large developers have already announced that they are either deferring or suspending new projects, at least until the outlook for the future becomes clearer. And I think Joey had mentioned that with regards to office buildings and some residential projects being suspended. The key for developers right now is cash flow, because every new project means that you are putting a lot of money on the line. Now, it's the portfolio of the individual developers will determine their performance and potentially their long-term strategy. So let's take a look at these four basic elements of a portfolio. For commercial offices, we find this to provide the most stable revenue. They have longer lease terms than retail, certainly longer lease terms than residential leasing. The occupants or occupiers of commercial office space are generally well-established companies. So they have the financial resilience to weather a temporary disruption of normal activity. For residential, we are seeing mixed results. There's still a lot of activity that we see at the low end, and we continue to see a lot of activity in the high end. So what explains this? The continued appetite for purchasing real estate is being driven either by a need, right? So these are growing families, people who want to move out of their parents' homes and start new homes for themselves. Or it's a growing family and you simply run out of space and you do need room to move. And then it's also being driven by ability. We have buyers who are fortunate enough that the effects of COVID have not affected them significantly, and they are in an enviable position that they can still afford to buy real estate, even for an investment. For retail, we've seen how retail has struggled a bit, and anyone who's had the opportunity to visit a mall within the last 2 or 3 weeks would understand this. Malls, like the airline industry, there's huge investment, and they are only really efficient when they're full. So while restaurants have takeout and delivery, we don't see them doing as well as they used to. We are hopeful that as the restrictions on dine-in limits start to be lifted. Currently, we are at about 30%. At some point, it's going to be 50%. The restaurants will continue to do better. Other retails, fashion, appliance, furniture, those are they are in a bit more need for foot traffic in the malls, and hopefully we will start to see the resurgence of visits to the mall soon. Hotels and resorts are struggling quite a bit more. They are dependent on travel and tourism, and until people feel comfortable traveling again, they will continue to suffer. Now, businesses may take, or business travel may take a little bit more time than tourism to come back, because as we've seen, here, it's fairly easy to do some business remotely by Zoom or any other medium.
Excuse me, Mr. Mirasol.
Yes.
Right now we can still see your first slide. I think it's not moving, or probably it's on a separate window.
Really? I am on my second slide already. So can you tell me what you're seeing?
We're still seeing the first slide together with the PowerPoint screen.
Okay. Let me stop sharing first, and let me try to share this again. Are you seeing it now?
Perfect.
Okay, great. So I won't go over these points again. The essential bullets are there. So going on to the next slide. Now I know that everyone is talking about the new normal, and certainly there will be some changes to the way real estate operates. But my personal thinking is that we are not going to see massive changes. The real estate of the future will look very much like the real estate that you saw just a few months ago. For office and commercial, for example, many people have been talking about working from home, and is this going to become much more widespread? My thinking here is, while there will be some jobs and some companies that can do well in working from home, my sense is that most companies will not adopt this. And this is not necessarily because there are problems with, say, Wi-Fi infrastructure, but more that it's very human to be able to work together. There have been reports where people are reporting higher productivity in work from home. My sense is that it may be a little bit overestimated. And I do think that while people can be productive, you can only be productive at home for so long. Now, working from home has been something which has been available in many countries over probably over 10 years now. And yet, the number of employees who actually work from home is actually still quite small. Now, we as a company, during the ECQ, we all had to work from home. But as we went into GCQ and people were allowed to go back to the office, I think many people were actually quite relieved that they'd be able to work in the office, because it actually creates a distinction between your home life and your work life. One of the challenges in working from home is that when everybody works from home, your whole day is
President Mirasol, your microphone is turned off. It's muted. For Mirasol, I think.
Miss May, I think na disconnect. Anyway, would you like to greet yung mga ating mga VIPs who are...
To acknowledge the presence of our honorary member, Dr. E.G. Ong, the first chairman of the Professional Regulatory Board for Real Estate Service, or the PRBRES. Also the NREA president of Metro CBD, Emmy Pulido. I think we can start the open forum or the question and answer portion. I would like to call on our moderators, our Vice Chairman, Benny Cabrieto, and our Secretary General, Jovi Tupas.
Hi, good morning to everyone. Actually, I have a is Mr. Tom Mirasol with us? Anyway, we can start with the with my first question. Actually, this is for the three speakers. As we know, this current COVID-19 pandemic is a worldwide crisis. And a lot of quotations have been said that in every crisis lies great opportunity. As a matter of fact, when written in Chinese, the crisis is composed of two characters. One represents danger, and the other one represents opportunity. I know that some of the speakers have addressed the opportunities in their presentation. But as a summary, perhaps, my common question to the three speakers is, what major opportunities do you see in the aftermath of this current crisis?
Do I start?
Sir Benny, maybe we
Yeah, Mr.
maybe we
Joey.
can ask Mr. Joey first.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me
Mr.
start.
Joey.
Let me kickstart the discussion. But I think for office, with the lockdown imposed, we saw initially greater demand for office space. You'd be surprised that we have major BPO clients that are now looking for bigger office space, because even if they only allow 50-60% of their staff reporting back to office, they will be allotting more office space per employee to avoid transmission, control infection. So, and another opportunity that we saw is that these BPO companies are now looking for office space near residential areas. So they currently have office space within core locations, Makati, Fort Bonifacio, Ortigas, even the Bay Area. But now they're looking at the secondary sites within Metro Manila, including Quezon City. So now they are moving towards the northern part of Metro Manila and prefer office spaces near residential areas so that there will be less travel time for their employees. Another opportunity that we see with this lockdown is the further decentralization of economic activities. As I mentioned earlier, not to be biased because I'm from Pampanga, but we saw more queries for office space in Clark. And I was surprised that even during the lockdown, a lot of medical coding companies have expressed plans to expand in Clark. Number one, because Clark has good medical schools, and also Clark is also a hub for outsourced accounting. There is one university in Angeles City in Pampanga. It's called Holy Angel University, and the graduates perform well annually during a CPA examination. So I won't be surprised if we see more of these companies occupying more space in Clark. In fact, they are trying to poach uh, current employees of auditing firms and are trying to lure them to go back to Pampanga and work there. But not just Pampanga, Cebu, we are seeing greater opportunities for Cebu developers because we now see more companies that are Metro Manila based trying to diversify and look for office space outside of Metro Manila. Of course, Davao is also a very important player in terms of property office development. Same with Iloilo and Bacolod. So I think one opportunity is for office and residential is that this lockdown, this pandemic has only raised the demand for investors to not be Metro Manila centric, but start looking at opportunities outside of Metro Manila. Also, as I discussed earlier, we are seeing more investors looking for beach-oriented, resort-oriented house and lots properties outside of Metro Manila because number one, they're trying to avoid the congested Metro Manila, congested capital. That is Metro Manila. So they are now looking at the residential options outside of the capital region. So you're right. Despite the uncertainties that we initially saw in the market, definitely there are several opportunities that developers should tap. And from what we know, have been starting to tap aggressively during this lockdown.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joey. Maybe first, I think Mr. Mirasol is back, but let us first
good.
hear with Attorney Bellica for that hanging question.
Thank you, Jovi. Well, for us, this is really an opportunity. We would say that you know, streamlining and digitalization is no longer desirable, but it is actually mandatory. We really need to streamline and automate our systems. If there was already a push prior to this pandemic, then now it's just not a push. It's a community who's actually just egging and asking for everything to happen already online. No, and as I would also say that this is also an opportunity that is available for the private sector to avail of the digital signatures in their own personal offices, industries. You see, the digital signature technology is not only being shared by DICT for the government, but I do suggest that if you are dealing with government most of the time in your businesses, then it's advisable for you to inquire on how you could also use this digital signature technology for your own, because you would eventually makikita po ninyo, you would be needing this as you would be transacting with government. Also, I would say that the new normal um, uh, gives us an advantage to reset everything. Uh, there is no, as I would say, uh, too odd of an idea on how to do things during the new normal. So nakita ho natin that we could re-strategize, we could basically reset everything. Um, as government adjusts with the current situation of the global pandemic, so would the public would be adjusting on how they interact with government offices. And ARTA, based personally, and the other allied agencies is working double time to reintroduce a new paradigm of how you would approach government service. It's not regulator centric, but it has to be customer experience centric. So isa ho sa ginawa ho namin dyan is ito recently with the Bureau of Internal Revenues, with the payment of taxes that we've been working with them since last year. And we're happy that they also were able to automate already the submissions of the audited financial statements. So this is the first time, if some of you are practicing CPAs or accountants, you would know that this is the first time that you could now submit your audited financial statement, which is the attachment to the ITRs online. So it closes the entire loop of automation now that you could do basically an automated transaction with the BIR. But speaking of BIR, one of the things that we are currently seek to help them with is for the registration of the online of the e-commerce, for the small players. But they are very willing and open to re-strategize and to rethink the registration process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Attorney Belgica, for that wonderful announcement and new insights on e-signatures. Again, we already have again back with us Mr. Tom Mirasol, President and COO of Federal Land. Mr. Mirasol?
Hi, I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, sir. Perfect.
Okay, let me try to share my screen. Please let me know if you can see it.
Yes, sir. Perfect.
And please let me know, is this where I kind of lost my connection? Do you remember what I was saying?
Yes, sir. On the last photo, hotels and resorts.
That was before this. So I was trying to make the point that there are going to be no massive changes in real estate. There will be some adjustments to take care of health and safety for COVID and other pandemics. But for the most part, I think the real estate that you see tomorrow will look very, very much like the real estate that you've seen all of your life. And this is primarily because of the human aspect of it. That is not something that you can sort of get away from. Office and commercial, while there will continue to be some work from home, I don't believe at this point that we have reached the point where people will, the majority of people will be working from home, because employees need that sort of camaraderie. They have to be able to meet and network with each other. Bosses want to be able to see what their employees are doing and to hear directly from them what their concerns may be. I tried to make the point before I got cut off that while business contracts are signed in the boardroom, the deals are made at the bar or at the restaurant or at the golf course, because you really have to get to know your partners before you commit to a future together. For residential, there is no virtual replacement for residential. As human beings, you will always need, a bedroom to sleep in, a kitchen to cook in, and a bathroom. And then you will need garden space and living space, and this has never changed, and it will never change. For retail, we will see some changes in retail, but I don't think we are going to see the end of the mall. Now, I think it was back in the late 80s when people were predicting that the mall will be going extinct, and we do see that in some places in the U.S., for example. The very large malls are not as popular as they used to be. But in the Philippine context, the mall has become the new sort of town square, and this is where friends and families come together to meet, and they have a this is how they how they make these connections. Can I just ask Joey? You're seeing. I'm getting a sense that you're seeing the wrong.
We're just seeing the slide master from PowerPoint.
The slide master.
Okay. Slide number 4. Yeah.
Slide number 4.
Yeah. I think you have 8 slides. Press.
Let me try to fix this. Okay. So let me unshare and then share again. Can you see that? Is it the right? Is it the right presentation?
We're seeing the entire PowerPoint program. I think we need to see the share screen or something.
Let me try this one more time.
Still number 4.
Okay. I hope this is working now.
That's it.
Okay, fantastic. Now, I spoke about the commercial office, residential, and retail. Now, for hotels and resorts, I think the change that we will see is increased emphasis on safety and health, given what's happening with COVID-19. Now, again, it will take a little bit longer for the travel and tourism industry to make its way back. But again, the basic human needs for people who are traveling, that will remain pretty much the same. Now, getting back to business is really the most immediate concern of developers at the moment. And there are many government agencies that developers are working with in order to ensure a timely and safe return to work. There's actually quite a few of them, and many of them, have directions which mostly agree with each other, but sometimes they don't agree with each other. The bottom line here is that there are no bad ideas from any of these agencies, but being able to comply with all of them will take a lot of time and a lot of money. So I've had conversations with my colleagues in other development companies, and we are all sort of asking the question, are you guys ready to get back to work? And almost universally, the response has been, well, it's very challenging to be able to do this in a way that complies with everything, again, because of the cost. So there are developers, ourselves included, who are thinking about, when is the best time to start? We may have to defer the start of construction on many of our projects until the requirements for getting back to work are eased to the point where we can actually afford to do this. And we're actually quite concerned about the number of people who are employed in construction and real estate who may be affected if we delay our return to work. Now, if you take a look at labor statistics, second to agriculture, construction and real estate employs the most number of people in the Philippines. So this is really a dilemma that we're trying to resolve. We're trying to work with as many industry partners as we can to find that safe way to return to work as quickly as possible. So without being able to do this, we're concerned that the ability of construction and real estate to resume its contribution to Philippine growth, both in terms of GDP and just paying salaries to people, may be delayed if we can't figure out the most efficient way of us getting back to business. Now, in closing, I would just like to say that private developers and government, we all need to work together to find a clear way to get back to normal. Otherwise, getting back to normal will be a challenge. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Mirasol. That's a nice presentation. And we now go back to our open forum with our moderators, Vice Chairman Benny Cabrieto and Secretary General Jovi Tupas.
Thank you, Ms. May. So, Mr. Benny, maybe we can ask also Mr. Mirasol the question we asked the two other speakers earlier, and then after that we'll go with a photo opportunity after that question, after Mr. Mirasol answers.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Here goes.
I don't have a question.
Yeah. As you know, we are in a worldwide crisis. And there are some quotations that says, in every crisis lies great opportunity. As a matter of fact, when written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of two characters. One represents danger, and the other one represents opportunity. So my question to the two other speakers, which I'm asking you now, is what major opportunities do you see in the aftermath of this current crisis?
Thank you. I see two immediate. One, and Joey has sort of averred to this in his talk about while we do see there's some concern on commercial office space. We do think that if requirements for less dense office space become more widespread, there's going to be increased demand for office space, regardless of what happens to POGOs. The other opportunity that I see is that if people are more concerned about health and wellness, it's an opportunity for us to start developing projects which are more aligned to these particular needs. And I'm looking forward to seeing the next generation of projects being developed with health and wellness in mind.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let's just have first a quick photo op, just in case something happens again. So we would like to request all participants to kindly turn your cameras on. We'll try to get a quick photo op, and then we'll go back to the open forum. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of faces already, about 25, 28, 30. So just smile. Okay, so smile. Okay, picture done.
Okay.
So let's go back again to the
Okay.
question and answer. Mr. Cabrieto?
Yeah, I think Marissa has a question.
Yes.
Can we give the floor to our Chair Emerita, Marissa?
Yes. Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to congratulate our wonderful, our great speakers. Of course, Mr. Bondoc, our Director General Jeremiah Belgica, and of course, President Mirasol. My question now is: we all know that the residential now is softening, and do we see that developers, instead of getting our our amortization, we are inclined now to do deferred payments instead of the monthly amortization for our buyers? Do you see that, President Mirasol? Nakahang si President Mirasol.
Yeah,
Ayan. Oo.
Microphone.
Yes.
Microphone.
Kasi I
Yeah.
have...
Okay,
yeah.
sorry. So, the question was, are we seeing a deferment of monthly amortizations?
Yes.
Yes, and that was a direction given by I think it was the IAPF or the DHSUD, that there will be an extension or a moratorium on monthly amortizations for a fixed period. After that, when things go back to normal, I think over time that you'll see that while there will be this period, within a few months we should be back to what regular payment schemes used to be.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mirasol. Can I have one more question with Director General Jeremiah? Okay. Arthur, Director General Jeremiah, Presidential or PAC, Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission under Chair Dante Jimenez, and I think Arthur is under the PAC. Is that correct? And then, if ever, what is the difference between the PAC Commission, the Corruption Commission, and the Red Tape department? Is it a department? I would just like to clarify on a common lingo sa commoners like us.
Sige, ma'am. We'll break it down. The Anti-Red Tape Authority is in a department level. We are directly under the President. The Director General is a cabinet rank. We are not under the PACC. The PACC is created by an executive order. The ARTA is created by legislation, which is R 11032. But they are, ang sabi ko nga ho dito, ang red tape at ang corruption, magkapatid po yan.
Yeah.
Because kapag mas madami pong mga unnecessary processes, now it poses as a continuing temptation for government offices to either maintain that process so that there would be opportunity for an alternative way of doing things, which brings us to alternative income that people would be getting. And so ang focus po ng ARTA is the push of the ease of doing business or under the 11032, yung batas po namin. At ang PACC is more general because they tackle anti-graft and corrupt practices under the Public Act 3019. And primarily, they focus on presidential appointees. Ang Anti-Red Tape Authority po, it goes national government agencies as well as local government, and kasama rin po barangay. Meron din po tayong mga jurisdiction po sa kanila as long as it is within the purview of the anti-red tape and ease of doing business trust. Kaya nga po yung mga nagre-require ho ng mga barangay na humingi sa kanila ng barangay permits in order for businesses to be able to register with the City Hall is no longer required. We are also calling their attention that it's already the local government units or it's in the City Hall, sila na ang pwede mag-issue ng barangay clearance, pero the fees that they would be collecting for that clearance should be downloaded to the barangay. para hindi ho creative, kanya-kanya pong mga paraan at iba-iba po ang proseso ng pagkuha po ng mga barangay clearance. Yan, Ma'am Marissa, ma'am. And great to see you again, Miss Marissa.
Yeah. At saka your dad is a good friend, di ba?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And Attorney Nes Perez, kasama ko rin siya sa Rotary Club sa
Yeah.
District 38.
Yes, he's my deputy, yes.
Under mo daw siya.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Very good. Thank you so much, Attorney Jeremiah. One last question for Mr. Joey Bondoc. Mr. Joey, of course, we are in the real estate business, and because of the comprehensive report of you, Mr. Mirasol, we have a very good overview already. But when it comes to the real retail shop, because we are running a jewelry store, and it seems that there's really no traffic, and then for the social distancing, how many months or what month do you think the retail shop will be on the go, and we will say that it's gonna pick up?
Well, we always say that the retail recovery will depend on the recovery of the Philippine and other global economies. Why? Because spending here in the Philippines is also dependent on OFW remittances, for instance. And, if a lot of global economies are struggling, if a lot of countries are struggling to keep their economies afloat, then they have no choice but to lay off employees, and this includes some of our Filipinos that are working abroad. And as I mentioned, if you look at the spending patterns here in the Philippines, during periods of global or regional crisis, the OFW remittances really drop. And we saw that during the Asian financial crisis when the remittances declined. And then during the global financial crisis, the inflow of remittances still grew, but at a much slower pace. And also, we're also looking at employment. And of course, as I also mentioned earlier, the unemployment reached a record high in April of 2020. 5 more million Filipinos have joined the ranks of the unemployed. So at Colliers International, what we always say is that the pace of recovery could probably start first quarter of 2021. Objectively, we can say that the dampened economic sentiment has really been affecting consumer spending. And of course, the Philippine economy is primarily consumption driven. 60% of our domestic economy is fueled by household consumption, and about 40-50% of that household consumption comes from food and beverage spending. So we still expect Filipino consumers to focus their spending on the essentials, food and such as medicine, but the discretionary spending, which of course also impacts the luxury retail, will probably start recovering early 2021, especially once the foreign tourists again continue to arrive here in the Philippines, and once we again welcome more offshore gaming employees, because we can't deny the fact that since the POGO thrived here in Metro Manila, a lot of luxury items have really recorded spike in terms of demand. So that's the pace of recovery that we are seeing for the retail segment.
Thank you, Mr. Joey. Thank you. So our MCs, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Marissa. So
it's on mute.
Okay.
Mute.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay. So we have another question coming from the audience. This is for all speakers. To all speakers, will the new normal go back to the old normal after a vaccine or cure will be made available? So what do you think about this? What are your comments? Maybe we can ask Mr. Attorney Belgica first, and then followed by Mr. Mirasol, and then followed by Joey.
Yeah. Arta is also part of the IATF, so I've been privileged to see all of the presentations as well. And I could say that whether we would be coming back or returning to the old normal or the new normal would indeed be the normal, whether it would happen or not, I think if it would be happening, it's not in the immediate future. We would still be in the better part of our more latest, future, more immediate future, we would be experiencing, operating under this new set of rules and protocols. And it would always be wise for not only the private sector, but more so with the government agencies to really acclimate itself with the way that is being done. And honestly, again, I think for the advocacy of ARTA, which is to streamline and to change the paradigm of things, of how things are being done, then I hope that we do not go back to the old normal because every one of us would agree that we want things to be better. So, yeah, yun po ang aking sagot dyan.
Thank you very much. How about Mr. Tom Mirasol regarding the going back to the old normal from the new normal once the vaccine or a cure is discovered?
Well, generally, I think I have to agree with Director General Belgica. No, it'll take a while before even when a vaccine does become available, it will take a while before it becomes um, available to everybody in the Philippines. So we will have to be quite careful in how we find our way back to that quote unquote normal. No? If we're talking long term, though, again, long term, I think people will continue to behave the way they do. And again, while you will see a few changes in behavior that will maybe remain permanent, I don't think it will be so different from the world that you're used to that you will not recognize it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mirasol. Mr. Mirasol, will you be going soon, or would you like to have your final parting thoughts about the seminar and the issue at hand?
Parting thoughts. Well, the Philippines has been remarkably resilient. Joey's chart showed a hint of that to everyone. I myself, and there are some people who are with us tonight, with us today online, can attest, Mr. Ricky Celis being one of them. We've been through a lot as a country and as a people. And in all of those trying times, the Philippines has simply come back. Now, it has not come back without investing a little bit in discipline and in improvements. We are seeing signs of that now. And because of that, I think we can be confident that, just like what we saw in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, whatever challenges come our way, we as a nation will find our way back to the growth that we've become accustomed to.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mirasol. May I call our president, National Real Estate Association President, Mr. Ricky M. Celis, to give our heartfelt thanks to Mr. Mirasol, as he needs to really do his work.
Thank you very much. Talagang hinanap ka namin. Buti na lang nakita ka ni Jovi. Of course, through Yeng, the better half. And of course, we appreciate you joining us, sharing your thoughts as one of the bigger developers, of course, in the country. And of course, good luck to you. We look forward to seeing you again, joining other NREA business meetings. We understand that your group already accredited with us, and sooner or later, of course, we'd like to have you join us also as our honorary member, and looking forward to having that done very soon. And again, thank you very much for joining us.
Would be my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, President Tom Mirasol. Thank you so much from NREA. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Mr. Mirasol. And let's go back to Joey. Yan. So hindi ka namin nakalimutan on that hanging question on what will happen. Are we still going back to the old normal? And even if a vaccine or a cure is found, and what are your thoughts about this, Mr. Joey?
Sorry, yeah, I thought I was able to escape that question, but I think it's a mix of old and new. Filipinos are very innovative. We're very adaptable to changes that come our way. And I think I'll just use as an example what we see in the office sector, wherein there is split operations, and this is being implemented aggressively by a lot of companies. So 50% are in a traditional office space, 50% either working from home or in a flexible workspace. And I think that we Filipinos have really, we have this distinct quality of finding opportunity in every uncertainty. And with all these changes that we are implementing right now, we believe that it will take time before we revert to the old normal. We will definitely be more innovative and adaptable to the changes that we are seeing now. And what will only happen is that we will move forward with these new trends that we are currently seeing in the market, including the property sector, of course.
Sir Benny, meron pang
yeah,
tayo
okay.
from question?
Yeah, I think si architect, our advisor, June Palafox, would like to ask a question, but I don't see him in the list of participants. Anyway,
No, he was
this
here.
is, but it's not here anymore.
Okay.
June, are you there? Anyway, I have this question directed to Director General Boots Belgica. He asked in Dubai, 56 permits can be secured online out of 25 agencies. Can we implement here, and this would address red tape and corruption effectively? Thank you, sir.
Thank you for that, Mr. President, Sir Benny. Butch is my dad. So
Yeah,
he's Mr. Butch.
I'm just reading.
Yeah, and I don't know. We normally get that people get confused, interchanges our name with me and my brother. And anyway, so thank you for that question. Yun po ang ginagawa namin ngayon, that we're trying to help address with the Nehemiah program, the national effort for the harmonization of efficiency measures of interrelated agencies. So basically, this program is it seeks to address the inter-agency red tape situation by identifying the 5 industries or the 5 sectors that has a direct and strongest contribution in the president's 10-point socio-economic agenda. So the 5 sectors that ARTA is pushing for this year, when it comes to the interagency red tape efforts, is the housing, the logistics, the food and pharma, the energy sector, and the interconnectivity or the common tower, the building of the common tower, which we have around 50,000 backlogs. We need to do a little bit more catching up on this to hasten our internet connections, internet connectivity. So the slide that I showed a while ago, that shows 147 signatures, 300 plus permits. It's the same thing. It's the same pattern that we see in these 5 important sectors also, because it involves 27, 30, 40 different government agencies. So it's very timely that we now have this DSUD, which has a stronger push when it comes to housing and the urban development, that we can now come up with the business one-stop shop that I have been speaking about a while ago, that we need to interlink the processes together of this agency into one stroke. If you want to build houses and communities, then you just go to this national business one-stop shops, and there's a single window for them, or a single entry point that would be receiving the documents that would be required by all of the other agencies. So if 30 agencies po yan, No, isa lang ho ang proseso at sistema po nila. So as I've said, the automation or digitalization comes after the streamlining or rationalization of processes. Kasi marami po sa mga government agencies would tell me, DG, hindi ho namin ma-streamline yung services namin kasi kailangan ho namin mag-automate. So I keep on telling them, hindi po, pwede niyo pong gawin at pagbutihin ang proseso. You could remove all those which are unnecessaries, tie up those which are related, and then you come up with a streamlined process, and then you could automate. So, yun ho ang ginagawa ho natin sa program ni Himaya. We hope that before the first quarter of next year, no, matapos po natin yung streamline process po nila. At ang sabi ho sa amin ni Secretary Del Rosario dyan is he actually wants to come up with a business one-stop shop and automation. Kung ma-automate rin ho natin yan within the year, then so be it. Pero ang focus ho namin is to streamline and rationalize the system for this year po para dun sa entire housing sector. So, papunta na po tayo dyan. Marami pong salamat sa inyo pong sinabi.
Okay, thank you, Attorney.
Okay, thank you, Attorney. Yeah, this next question is directed to Mr. Joey Bondoc. This is about the problem with the banks. As you know, during the 1997 financial crisis, the banks, sales became scarce. There's a great reduction in sales. So a lot of developers cannot service their loans with the bank. But now the crisis is worse because it involves everybody. And I foresee that there will be a lot of foreclosures or dasyat impago to the banks. So the loan portfolio of the banks will be greatly affected because there will be a lot of non-performing assets. So money will be tight. And then there's a question in the floor which mentions about this also. It says that some of the banks right now are coming up with memorandum restricting home application this June. What can you say about this?
Well, yeah, that's correct. I have a few contacts from the banking sector, and they're wanting saying that the requirements for loans, including housing loans, have really become tighter, and they have really been somehow reluctant in terms of approving housing loans. I think, of course, the banks know that we're in a very tight economic situation right now. I mean, if you look at the indicators, employment, remittances, as well as the consumer confidence in general, it does not look good for the residential sector. And that's one of the reasons why one of our projections for the property market is we will see a correction for the residential prices in 2020. Now, we have been asked about this projection. What are our indicators? What are the factors that we considered when we did this projection? So, of course, you have the supply, the number of units that will be completed this year, and of course, the demand drivers. So the POGOs, the foreign employees that are leasing out or buying condominium units, and of course, even the local end users and investors. So I think the central bank already announced that next month, July, they'll be coming up with an updated figure on the non-performing loans. And we are all looking at these figures because this will probably determine how developers will respond to this NPL ratio. I think a lot of developers, and I hear this from a lot of our contacts from the developer side, that these developers are now reluctant to launch new projects. As I mentioned, we have 47,000 unsold inventory in the market, and they will be focused to sell those remaining unsold condominium units that we have right now in the market. But I think objectively, the consensus really is that the NPL ratio will further increase. And if this further rises, then banks will just become really more reluctant and further tighten the grip in terms of allowing approving housing loans.
Thank you, Joey Bondoc. I think Director General Belgica is about to leave. Can we ask our Chair Emerita to, in behalf of NREA, to give him a thank you
Yes.
message?
Thank you so much. Yes. On behalf of the National Real Estate Association of the Philippines, or NREA, I would like to commend, of course, our great speakers. Ayan, masasabi ko, great speakers of all time. I'm really glad to be having you here with our webinar business meeting of NREA. Of course, Director General Jeremiah Belgica, a very good friend. And of course, Mr. Joey Bondoc of Colliers, and our President and CEO of Federal Land. Maraming salamat po, President Tom Mirasol. And after many months of being confined sa ating mga bahay, ngayon naman po ay natututo tayo with our online digital techniques. Natututo po tayo kung paano tayo, how to go about with the new normal. And I would say that we have to adopt the new changes in our environment. We have to be resilient. We have to be alert. We have to adapt in these changing times, especially in this pandemic, this COVID-19. We have to support each other. We have to make sure that we can do it. Sabi nga po ni Secretary Carlo Nograles, we have to heal as one. And of course, I would like to say that sinabi rin po ng ating nursery character na si Jack, we need to be nimble and quick. And of course, we will be able to jump over the fire and supermount any calamities and ito nga pong pandemic natin. Alalahanin po natin, kinakailangan po nating maging maganda ang ating economy to be able to survive, because kung wala po ang business natin, walang ating real estate industry, saan na po tayo pupunta? Kasama po ang ating mga government officials and of course, led by President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Mahal po namin kayo. Ang ating mga frontliners, pasalamatan natin sila. At ang NREA, National Real Estate Association, hindi po tayo tumitigil. Lahat po ay gagawin natin para sa ating mga chapters nationwide. Gayon din po sa buong Pilipinas, kung ano man po may tutulong natin. President Ricky Celis, Chairwoman Architect Grace Layog, of course, Sec Gen Mel, ang ating si Jovi, Topa, si ating Miss Amy Sun, sa lahat po ng officers and director, ang ating mga board of advisors, si Architect Jun Palafox, Mars Mendoza, Architect Nestor Magno, sa inyo pong lahat, Board of 2020 Board of Officers and Directors. Maraming salamat po. Welcome. Pilipinas, buhayin natin ito. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair Emerita. We will have one final thoughts from Attorney Belgica.
Thank you, Ma'am Marissa, for that very inspiring message. Thank you for having ARTA. We are very anxious to work with NREA. Kayo po yung tipong group at organization that should really be working very closely with us, because it's not just streamlining for streamlining's sake. It's really making the lives of people more convenient and responsive as the need is right now that we have. I would just say that if you have other questions, other matters that you would want to raise to ARTA, you could go to our website, www.arta.gov.ph. Very active po ang ARTA sa social media. We have our FB page, Instagram, and also our Twitter accounts. 90% of my employees are millennial. So very savvy po sila pagdating po sa kanilang sa amin pong mga websites. So as I've mentioned, the train of reform has already started. The train of reform against red tape has already begun. It might be starting from a standstill position, and it has started to move. So mabagal man siya sa umpisa, pero ito po'y bumibilis and it's gaining momentum. I do hope and pray that everybody joins into this reform. We're not pretending as if wala na pong red tape sa atin hong bayan, but I'm saying that better days or better things are ahead of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Atty. Bellica. Again, we'd like to thank our speakers, Tom Mirasol, Atty. Bellica, Joey Bondoc. Also, thank you for our sponsors, our world-class Kababayan, Marissa Del Mar, Ganzon, Grace Layug, BRIA Homes by Red Rosales, Duraville Realty and Development Corporation by Jeffrey Bongat, the Realcor Incorporated by Seni Fruto, and the Philippine Daily Inquirer. Vice Chairman Benny and Jovi Tupas, do we have still questions to answer?
We would need to ask first permission from our president, Mr. Ricky Celis, if we can still do overtime since we still have Mr. Joey here and maraming questions pa kay Mr. Joey.
Closing na kay Joey, baka napagod na siya.
No, it's okay. Sure. For NREA and Mr. Ricky Celis.
Let's shoot one or two questions to Joey, and then like everybody else, let's give him later on the parting shots na, and then we can conclude the business forum after that. Sir Jovi and Sir Benny, we can shoot the last 2 or 3 questions siguro kay Joey. Abusuhin natin habang nandyan siya.
Okay, so Mr. Joey, ito, what do you think is needed to overcome this situation that we have right now? Or if you were to become one of the advisors of the IATF, what would you suggest so that we can recover faster?
Well, in terms of the economy, I think it is important that we keep the economy, we keep businesses afloat. So it is important that the government, of course, allocates enough for the small and medium enterprises, and also provides enough for its social amelioration program, especially for the most vulnerable sectors of our population. But we also should remind ourselves that there are critical programs that this government has started that will help stoke the property sector. And I'm speaking of the Build program of the government. It's reassuring that the Departments of Finance and Public Works and Highways have mentioned that the projects started by the Duterte administration will continue and will be developed as scheduled. I mean, we have railway projects that are extending all the way to Cavite, Pampanga, Bulacan, and even the airport modernization and rehabilitation in Clark, as well as Davao and other parts of the country. So at Colliers, what we always say is that these infrastructure projects will help dictate the developers' strategies in the near to short term, in the next 3, 5, 10 years, and will also help raise land and property value. So in our opinion, while interest rates are important in helping revive the property sector, once that pent-up demand starts to kick in by 2021, we believe that these infrastructure projects, once completed, will also help the property sector to recover starting 2021. So we're optimistic that the government has committed that it will continue to build, usher in the golden age of infrastructure and decentralized economic opportunities outside of Metro Manila.
Joey, another question.
Yes, sir.
Coming from our board advisor, Andy Manyalak.
Yes, sir.
Since there will be around 11,000 units expected to be turned over this year,
yep,
and 2/3 being in the Bay Area,
yep,
what are your projections on the rental rates for the residential units? This is also considering the current status of the POGO plans.
Yeah. Okay, we have to note that the property space, also the property sector, is in a precarious situation, especially if we look at that part of the demand that has been dependent on POGOs. I showed that slide earlier, wherein when POGOs entered the market, the office leasing per square meter increased by 21% in the Bay Area. And when we were tracking the growth of lease rates and prices in the Manila Bay Area, we also saw significant increases in terms of capital values as well as rental value increase. So I think for the residential sector, our projected correction or drop in lease rates is a minimum of 5%. Of course, in areas that have been dependent on POGOs, the drop or decline in lease rates could be a little higher, mainly because we're looking at a more anemic demand from POGOs because of the travel restrictions that have been imposed by the Philippine and Chinese governments. There are no new Chinese POGO employees that are entering the Philippine market. And of course, we can't deny the fact that this is one segment that has driven not just the demand for office space, but also for residential units in the area. So for office lease rates, for instance, if we're looking at leasing out an office building at 1,300 pesos per square meter for a POGO company, if you're a non-POGO, a BPO, call center, a traditional company, you'll probably be paying about 700, 800 pesos per square meter. So that's a big difference. Now, if there are no new POGO employees that will occupy the condominium units, that will be completed in Manila in 2020. And of course, 2/3 of these are in the Bay Area. Definitely, we will also see a correction in the Bay Area because 2/3 are located in that business location where the POGOs have really drove demand or have driven demand over the past 3 to 4 years since 2016 when they entered the Metro Manila market.
Okay, thank you, Joey. Is Architect Manu still?
No, he's not around.
No
So
more.
I think we can conclude the question and answer portion.
Yeah, parting words of Joey. Bondoc.
Yeah, okay. I think for parting words, we're seeing a lot of uncertainties in the Philippine property market. These are, whenever I present now, I look at the dropping projections for land values, for office lease rates, for residential prices, for a retail space that will be leased out. But we believe that there are opportunities in every for those uncertainties that we are seeing in the market. And as I mentioned, while the central bank, for instance, is projecting an economic contraction for the Philippines in 2020, they are seeing a faster recovery, 7.8% GDP growth in 2021. And that should also help the Philippine economy recover. And we believe that that rebound in economic opportunities will have a major spillover effect on the property sector. Also, we should not forget that owning a house remains a major aspiration of every Filipino, and that should also aid in the recovery of the property development sector of the Philippines going forward.
Okay, thank you so much, Bondoc. I think President Ricky has a message for you. President Ricky.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joey.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. Palagi ka namin invite and then mo kami pinagbibigyan. And
yes, of course.
It's always very informative when you're around, no? So parang NREA is of course indebted to you with all of the information that you're giving us, and we'd like to formally announce that Mr. Joey Bondoc is now an honorary member of officially. So welcome to the family.
Thank you,
Andrea.
NREA.
Welcome to our family, and of course, thank you very much to you and the whole Colliers family.
Thank you. Yes, of course. Thank you.
We hope to see you again in future engagements. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye. Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Pres Ricky. I think we have to thank all our speakers. All of them are all very good and great very informative speeches and talk. Thank you for Joey Bondoc, Atty. Belgica, Mr. Tom Mirasol, all our NREA Board of Trustees and officers, our advisors, honorary members, participants, chapter members, and presidents. Thank you for all. We're expecting you again for our next NREA Business Forum on July 30 for a more exciting forum, interesting topic and speakers. Thank you.
And let's also thank everybody that joined us on the live streaming, on the FB, and on the Zoom. Thank you so much. We welcome you in our next webinars again from NREA. Thank you so much. God bless us all and let us all stay safe. Paus na ako.
Thank you.
Congratulations, President Ricky Celis, Benny, Mel, Jovi, Architect Grace Layog was there. My good friend Peter Wallace was there. To everybody. Andy Manyalak was there. And si Architect Palafox was there also earlier. Our CBD chapter, President Emmy Pulido and all our chapters, welcome. And join us again sa ating next webinar by July 30. Thank you so much. God bless us all. Mars, Advisor Mars Mendoza is with us.
Mars.
Okay, nandiyan pala si Mars. Okay. And then, syempre, di ba, after nito, meron pa tayo na Amy.
Yeah, okay.
Let's muna tayo. 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Okay.
Signing
Ayan,
out.
ayan, signing out. Andiyan si Ruth.
Okay.
Ayan, sino ba yung mga hindi ko nakita? Si Ruth, si Dr. Ichi. Ayan, ang dami. Ayan. Bye. Rod was there. Hazel was there. Thank you. God bless. God bless. Thank you. See you,
Bye.
Architect. Bye.
Congrats. Bye-bye.